Yes. Welcome to the Washington SSM podcast. As I always say, like, subscribe, share, and comment. Don't forget to click the like button. It helps with the algorithm to make the video push out to the mass. So let's go. Today, I'm doing a blind reaction about Thomas Sowell. He's a scholar. He's an economist. He has been to all the top schools, like all the top schools in the states. He's in his late 80s now, but he's been hidden from the world because he has a brilliant mind. But because I've been following Thomas Sowell for around roughly a couple months now. I've been listening to most of his speeches and his he has written a few books as well. And just like Jordan Peterson, as I mentioned before, like those two people, because their view and their thoughts on the world is spot on to me in my idea. So let's watch this video quick, and it's about Thomas Sowell talking about the welfare state and see if it still applies to us today, in modern day.
Writer Nicholas Kristof, I'm quoting you, asserts that there is you're quoting him, overwhelming evidence that centuries of racial subjugation still shape inequity in the 21st century, quote, closing quote, and he mentions, open quote, the lingering effects of slavery, close quote. And now this is Tom Sowell. If we wanted to be serious about evidence, we might compare where blacks stood 100 years after the end of slavery with where they stood after 30 years of the liberal welfare state.
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, in 1960, which would be almost 100 years after the end of slavery, 22% of black
Listen carefully to what he's saying.
grew up in homes with only one parent.
Just 22%.
Yes.
4 out of 5 were in homes with both parents.
Yes. 30 years later, after the liberal welfare state, that number had more than tripled. And so I said, well, let us compare, if we can speculate on how much that 22% was due to the legacy of slavery. But we know that tripling was not due to the legacy of slavery. It was due to the legacy of a whole different set of policies. And you can look at it so many other ways. Education. Stuyvesant High School in New York, as you know,
Education is
is
key in anything.
a tough exam. In 2012, the percentage of black students who had gotten into Stuyvesant High School was less than 1/10 of the percentage of black students who had gotten into Stuyvesant High School 33 years earlier.
I didn't know that.
There's Dunbar High School in Washington, which was an elite black high school for a very long time. In 1993, the number of kids out of Dunbar High School who went on to college was less than it was 60 years earlier, which would have been in the depth of the Great Depression.
So if the comparison between progress, simply the decency of
Yes.
life available
Yes.
to people, they weren't the families were intact, and schools worked, and the neighborhoods were more or less safe.
Yeah.
People were able to lead decent lives. If the contrast between that world and the world we inhabit now is owing so directly to liberal policies intended, so we're told, to help African Americans, why do African Americans support the more liberal of the two parties, the Democrat?
Let me see if we can break this down. If you listen to what he says, back in the, let's say, in the 60s, the 50s, 60s, then black families used to stay together, because as he said, it's 22% of homes in the black community was single parent. So majority of black people in the 40s, 50s and 60s, they were more stick together. And as he said, in the schools, blacks used to do way better in the schools then as well, because don't forget, back in them days, in the 50s and the 60s, there was no affirmative action where you get into a school because of your race. You had to be, back then, black people used to push further and study harder because they were more smarter back then, in my opinion. But now, because we have all this affirmative action and minority this and minority that, but Then you have to put in the work. Remember, some of the most brilliant people we have in our histories from the 30s, 40s, and 50s when they have to work. And remember, they used to have no light, and they was banned from reading, and they have problems going to school, but they still push through and gain this knowledge. But fast forward 30 years in the future, to now, let's say, as I said in the video, in 2013, 72% of the black community have single parent homes. And why? Because of the welfare state. That's mean they separated us, because when black people was more together, there was, because remember they had Black Wall Street and black people used to strive, and they have more businesses, and they was more prominent. But so they tried to break that up by bringing in the welfare state and tell her, and so you make the mother, the black woman, put the men. On the way you could get welfare, then you can't have a man in the household. So they make sure they separate the black female from the male, and stigmatize it, and as you can do better. You can get, because you can get a welfare home, you get money for the kids, and you get money they put in a home, which is now exploding into this Section 8 thing. So what he's basically saying is, if you compare harder times to now, it's a big difference. If you know, as I said in the video, in these music videos that we have now, all these music videos, well, not all, let's say, I don't even know the percentage, because I want to be correct, I don't want to be guessing, but they have gun taunting in the videos, and there's mass shooting, and everything exploded. But let's continue with this video and here and see what Thomas Sowell is saying about the welfare state and black people in modern day.
Party at the rates of 90 and more percent. Why is the first African American president so deeply committed to promoting and extending liberal policies? Why is his African American Attorney General, again, so deeply committed to affirmative action and other...
Yeah, affirmative action is what destroyed the black community. Affirmative action.
All of those. But to take the political thing, one of the things I discovered in the research for my book I'm currently working on is that leaders of groups that are lagging in countries around the world almost invariably have counterproductive policy for them. And it makes perfect sense, because insofar as members of lagging groups assimilate into the values and achievements of the larger society, they don't need those leaders. I mean, there's no mystery to me as to why Jesse Jackson says what he does, or Al Sharpton.
Listen to this part. This is not Al Sharpton.
Benefits them, but it does not benefit the people they lead. And all the incentives are for leaders.
Basically, what he's saying is Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, they was counterproductive to the black race. Basically,
wouldn't there?
Yes, but one of these
was different because he was earliest, or what? Why? What's different?
Well, it's like insurgent movements in general. When an insurgency starts off, by definition, it has an uphill battle. Now, and you can look at the history of Christianity, for heaven's sake. If you're going to be a Christian in the Roman Empire, you know, before in the first century, you had a lot of grief to go through. Now, but after Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, this is a bonanza. And there's a lot to be done. And so now you will follow policies that are the opposite of what you advocated.
Okay, let's pause it there, because I think it's about to finish, and it's finished. So listen what he said. When the movement start, most of the time, like with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they had an uphill battle. So there was more, there were more structure. But now, that struggle is not really as prevalent as back then. So you have these newer activists like Al Sharpton and the Jesse Jacksons. For me, they get barred out by the powers to be, and then they now trying to peddle. Can notice, especially with Al Sharpton, he always come around when there is a racial issue, and then he blows it up without even get the full facts of the story, and then he get everybody riled up, and then after donation and blah blah blah, and then he run for office and all that crap. Which is why the black activism, I don't so believe in that. And listen what he said about Christianity as well. Christianity in the first century, they were brutal. Because remember, if you're not a Christian, you're considered a pagan. And Christians used to kill anybody that's not Christian, especially in the Catholic Church. And they use it to dominate race, for riches and for culture. That's what I'm telling people all the while. Black people suffer the most is when they accepted Christianity as their own, because Christianity proved that no matter what someone do to you, there is always a scripture to tell you, oh, forgive and forget and don't retaliate. But remember, way before Christopher Columbus, side note, way before Christopher Columbus came to the Caribbean, especially when he stopped off in Jamaica, and he met the Arawaks and the Caribs. Remember that they used to worship the moon, but because he uses his intellect, and there was going to be an eclipse shortly after he arrived, and because they didn't give him no food, no water, he couldn't come ashore. He tell them he gonna steal the moon if they don't give him if they don't give him all the if they don't give him what he want, basically. So, and it's in history, because I studied this in high school when I was much younger, and it's recorded. So Christopher Columbus was a pillager and a brutal, he's a rapist as well. So I don't know why people still celebrating Christopher Columbus Day as he's some great inspirational. Because again, people don't know the history. Anyway, back to what I'm saying. And after the eclipse, now they come and bow down to him and tell him, yeah, and then so comes he get to conquer the Caribbean by because he now take all the treasures, the trees and animals, and bring it back to Spain, which we were. Anyway, so this is what Thomas Sowell is saying. If you want to control a particular group, just put them on welfare, and which is what they did with the black community. Because you notice no other race is on welfare like the blacks, like the black race. We are on the most welfare, and people believe it's a great thing. They don't want to work, and that's another issue. The younger generation, this Gen Z, what we're in now, no one wants to work. Everybody wants to just collect money, go party, and drive expensive cars without working for it. So that one, they stay home, collect money from the government. There's no man in the household to bring the child up in the right way. So they raise up. So every generation is raising a worse generation, and unless there's a two-parent home. And this is why Thomas Sowell also did I'm gonna do a next video on why Asian kids are more educated and more and succeed more than blacks. And in the video, I saw he said because 1 in 5 Asian is have a single parent. So out of every 5 Asian kid, only 1 out of the 5 don't have a mother and father in the home. So majority of the culture of Asian is mother and father in the home, and education is pushed. But we don't do that in the black race. We do the opposite. So anyway, I'm gonna do a video on that, and why Asian children are much more smarter than most other race, and why they are more prevalent to go to higher heights. Anyway, that's it for this podcast. Don't forget to like this video, help with the algorithm, because no, we have to push it out to the masses. This is knowledge. This is what is held back from us. So don't forget, like it so you can push it to the masses, so we can get more knowledge. And because the more knowledge you have, the better it is for you to make educated decisions. Peace.